Welcome. Tonight we're going to sail far away from the modern world, back into the damp hammocks, rotting biscuits, and salty winds of the 1600s, where the pirate life was not nearly as glamorous as the legends make it seem. No parrots, no treasure maps, just hunger, disease, betrayal, and the occasional ghost. So get comfortable and take a deep breath. If you enjoy this kind of videos, don't forget to subscribe for more calming tales like this one, only if you find it enjoyable. And before you drift off, I'd love to know where in the world are you listening from tonight, and what time is it right now, where you are. Leave a comment below, I always read through them. Now then, let's set sail. The sea is calm tonight. The stars above twinkle like pinpricks in a worn canvas, and the moon casts a lazy shimmer across the dark, endless ocean. You are standing on the creaking deck of an old wooden ship, barefoot, because your boots are soaked through. The salty air stings your lips, your shirt clings to your back, you're sticky with sweat, and the faint reek of fish. Welcome to pirate life in the 1600s. This is not the beginning of a grand adventure. No, this is the beginning of discomfort, exhaustion, and an impressive amount of lice. You are no longer a civilian, and definitely not a noble adventurer. You're a pirate now, or at least a hopeful recruit in a floating society where most of your shipmates have names like One-Eyed Tom or No-Nose Jack, and none of them smell particularly great. The ship itself groans like an old man every time the wind catches the sails. It's a caravel, or maybe a brigantine, something low in the water and weathered by years of salt storm and cannon fire. Everything is wet. The ropes are wet. The deck is wet. Your bedding, if you were lucky enough to get any, is wet. If you sneeze right now, you might drown. It's your first night on board. You'd like to sleep, but the hammocks are already swinging like possessed cradles, and every creak sounds like a cannon being loaded. You find a bit of space in the dark below deck, next to a barrel of something that smells like a blend of vinegar and rotting cabbage. That's probably your dinner tomorrow. You curl up on a rough cloth sack that used to hold onions, or possibly rats, and try to sleep, but your mind wanders. How did you end up here? Maybe you were fleeing the law. Maybe you were press-ganged in a tavern after too many ales. Maybe you volunteered because you thought pirate sounded better than starving farmer. Or maybe you were just desperate for something, anything different. And now, lying in the dim candlelight of the hold, you're not entirely sure if this was the right decision. In the morning, the bosun's whistle jolts you awake. It's barely dawn, and already you're expected to be on deck, swabbing, hauling, lifting, cursing. The sea is grey and endless. You don't remember the last time you saw land. You're handed a wooden bucket and a stiff brush and told to scrub until the floor is clean enough to eat off of. Which is ironic, because you will probably eat off it soon, whether it's clean or not. Above you, sails flap in the breeze. The masts rise like skeleton arms into the sky. You watch as seasoned crewmates scurry up the rigging like spiders, tightening ropes and tying knots you've never seen before. You're told to help with a pulley. You pretend you know what that means. You do it wrong. The captain yells. The first mate yells. A man with half a beard and no eyebrows also yells. Though you're not sure what his rank is, you decide to just keep pulling, and pulling, and pulling. You're starting to realize that pirate life involves a great deal of pulling. Your hands blister quickly. The rope is rough and splintered, and before midday you've already drawn blood. No one offers sympathy. A man named Rufus, he has teeth like corn kernels, pats your back and tells you this is the easy part. Then he shows you the scar where he once caught his arm in a capstan and lost 2 fingers. He laughs as he shows you. You pretend to laugh too. The sun climbs higher. It beats down like a blacksmith's hammer. You can smell your own skin burning, and the sea reflects the light so harshly that your eyes water constantly. Shade doesn't exist. Everyone squints. Everyone sweats. No one drinks enough. There's water technically, but it tastes like wood and mold, and sometimes you have to pick a bug out of it first. You drink it anyway. Lunch is served in a large communal pot. It's grey. That's all you can tell. Someone says it's stew. Someone else says it's rat. Both might be right. You eat it because you're starving. It tastes like warm sadness. The bread you're given hardtack is harder than stone, and seems to contain a small colony of weevils. You pick them out at first. Eventually you stop bothering. Welcome to the golden age of piracy. It is in many ways a very ironic name. As the afternoon stretches on, the ship sways lazily through the waves. Your stomach doesn't like this. You try to keep working, but the nausea creeps in. You bend over the railing and give the sea a piece of your lunch. No one mocks you. Everyone has done it. The sea takes what it wants. Later you're told to climb the mast. It's high, much higher than you thought. The wind is stronger up there. Your hands slip. Your legs shake. But you make it halfway up before you look down. That's when the fear hits you. There's no harness. There's no safety line. If you fall, you'll either die on the deck or drown in the sea. You cling to the ropes and try not to cry. A man near the top shouts encouragement. Don't die yet. We need someone to clean the latrine. At dusk the work finally slows. You sit on the deck, sore, sunburned and more tired than you've ever been. The sunset is beautiful, in a distant, cruel sort of way. It reminds you that the world is still out there, somewhere beyond this endless blue. But here, on this floating prison of splinters and sweat, the sunset means only one thing: a few hours of restless sleep before it all starts again. You make your way below deck. It's hot, stuffy, smells like old socks and wet rope. You find a hammock that isn't already occupied by a snoring brute and climb in. It swings slightly, rocked by the rhythm of the sea. You close your eyes, and for just a moment you think maybe this isn't so bad. Then something small and furry scurries across your foot, and you remember, you are a pirate now, and this is only the first day. The sea is still calm, but your stomach is not. You wake to the sound of someone vomiting off the starboard side, their retching rhythmically matching the creak of the hull. That's not unusual. In fact, it's something of a daily concert, a pirate symphony of indigestion and bad decisions. You don't even flinch anymore. Your stomach growls, which is frankly a bit presumptuous, considering what it's about to receive. Breakfast is served in a cracked wooden bowl, handed to you by the cook, a man with a beard so dense it probably contains its own species of lice. He doesn't speak. He just grunts and slops something unidentifiable into your bowl. It's beige, possibly grey. It smells faintly of old socks and regret. This is peas porridge, or maybe it was peas porridge, or perhaps it was just whatever was left at the bottom of yesterday's dinner pot, stirred with a bit of flour and reboiled until it no longer resembles any natural food group. You sit down cross-legged on the deck, as the morning sun begins to bake everything in sight, and you take your first bite. It is, in a word, disappointing. But that's not the worst of it. No, that title goes to the bread. If you can call it bread, it's hardtack, a name that sounds like a nickname for a retired wrestler, but is in fact a form of ship's biscuit. It's flour, water, and salt, baked until it's basically rock. Some say it's food, others say it's a dental trap disguised as nourishment. You try to bite it. Nothing happens. You try again, this time with more commitment. Crack. You're not sure if that was the hardtack or your molar. The trick, the others tell you, is to soak it in beer or stew until it softens. But that takes patience, and your hands are trembling from hunger. So you chew, slowly, painfully. You feel the weevil inside pop. You chew again. Protein, you tell yourself. You need the protein. Some pirates actually prefer to eat the weevils rather than pick them out. Less fuss, more gain. You're not there yet, but give it another week. There's a small side of salted meat, usually pork or beef, though it has the texture of a worn leather boot. You have to slice it with a knife, and even then it resists. Salted meat on a pirate ship has likely been sitting in a barrel since the last lunar eclipse. It's chewy, gritty, and somehow still manages to be both too dry and too slimy at once. The salt stings your cracked lips, and when you swallow, it feels like you're forcing a rope down your throat. Still, you eat it. Because you have to, and because this is one of the better meals, you reach for your drink. A tin mug filled with, yes, your morning grog. Grog is water mixed with rum, or sometimes water that used to be rum. Sometimes it's rum mixed with lime juice, sugar, or spoiled molasses. Other times it's just cloudy water with a shot of something vaguely alcoholic. The main point is that it doesn't kill you. Not immediately, anyway. You sip. It burns, but at least it doesn't taste like rope water. That, by the way, is what you'll drink when there's no grog. Water on a ship is stored in massive wooden barrels, and after a few days it starts to taste like whatever else is in the barrel. Mildew, moss, rat droppings, the ghost of someone who sneezed on it last week. You might find a bit of green film floating on top. That's algae. Consider it a vegetable. It's the only green you'll see for months. Rainwater is the prize. On stormy nights, sailors sometimes set up canvas tarps to collect it. If you're lucky, you might get a cup of fresh, cool rainwater. If you're unlucky, you'll be the one collecting it. standing barefoot in a howling gale with the tarp slapping you in the face and lightning striking just a little too close. Still, it's better than the barrel. As for variety, well, that depends. Some ships catch fish. You might be handed a raw fish and expected to gut it yourself. The older pirates will laugh as you try not to drop it. Then they'll eat it raw with a dash of salt and a shrug. Others try to trap birds or turtles when near land. Sea turtles are a rare delicacy. If one is caught, the crew might celebrate. Boiled turtle meat is fatty and tender, and the shell can be used as a makeshift dish or helmet. If you're really lucky, the cook might even toss in some dried herbs from a pouch he's been saving since the last raid. You won't recognize the flavor. That's fine. It probably died centuries ago. Once in a great while the ship raids a port or a merchant ship, and you get a true feast: fresh fruit, bread that doesn't hurt to chew, maybe even cheese. Those days are holy. Pirates whisper about them like myths. They're the stories you hear below deck at night, murmured like bedtime tales for broken men. Remember the oranges? One sailor asks, eyes misty. Aye, another says. Sweet as sin. You sigh. You've never tasted an orange. But you believe them. You finish your meal, or what remains of it, and wipe your mouth with your sleeve. There's no napkin, of course. That's what sleeves are for. Or maybe your hair. Doesn't matter. No one judges. Everyone's equally filthy. The cook clangs a pot to signal that breakfast is over. Lunch will be more of the same. And dinner, well, sometimes dinner is just yesterday's lunch reheated and renamed. You stand stomach only half satisfied, and prepare to haul rope again. The sun is climbing. Your skin is already pinking. Your mouth is dry, but you know better than to ask for more water. You'll get your grog ration later, maybe. And as you step over the leftover stew spill on the deck and feel something squish under your foot, you don't even look. It's probably best not to know. Welcome to your new diet. The days at sea blur together now. The sky changes, the winds shift, the crew grumbles, but the meals stay the same, and that's part of the problem. As the ship creaks gently under a morning sun, and your hands fumble through the same chores, coiling rope, scrubbing the deck, fetching buckets, you begin to notice something's wrong. At first it's small, a bruise on your leg that takes longer than usual to fade, an ache in your joints, which you blame on too much work, or maybe the cold, damp hammock you're forced to sleep in. But then your gums start to bleed when you bite into that rock-hard biscuit, and you taste something metallic on your tongue. You try not to think about it. Everyone tells you it's just shipmouth, a charming term pirates use to describe the flavor of salted beef, sour grog, and 3 weeks without citrus. But then you wake up one morning and see something alarming. One of your teeth is loose. It wobbles slightly, just enough for your tongue to catch the edge. You test it, again and again, with quiet dread, and yes, it's definitely moving. A few days later, it falls out. You don't even feel it happen. You spit, and there it is in your palm. A small sad reminder of land life. You're not alone. Around you, other pirates are missing teeth too. One man has a smile that looks like a busted picket fence. Another tries to hide the gaping hole where his front tooth once was by growing out a mustache. It doesn't help. And the ones who try to ignore it, their gums turn purple, their legs swell, and some of them, well, they stop getting up at all. This is scurvy. The sailor's scourge, the toothless terror, the thing they didn't tell you about when they handed you a cutlass and a dream. It's caused by a lack of vitamin C, though no one on board knows that. They just know it happens. Slowly, painfully, quietly, you start to see the signs more clearly now. Men walking stiffly, holding their bellies. Black and blue spots appearing on arms and legs without any injury. Gums so swollen, they look like bruised fruit, pushing teeth out one by one. When they speak, their voices are thick and slurred, not from rum, but because their mouths are in revolt. Some whisper that it's a curse, others say it's just part of pirate life. But the older sailors, the ones with only 3 teeth left and a grim sense of humor, call it a badge of honor. You don't feel honored, you feel miserable. Eating becomes a chore. You dread each bite, not because of the taste, though the taste is terrible, but because it hurts. Every chew sends a sharp pain into your jaw. Your gums feel like they're made of paper, ready to tear. You chew on one side of your mouth, carefully avoiding the tender areas, but eventually there's nowhere left that doesn't throb. The cook notices. He offers you a special treat, boiled cabbage. It's grey, slightly mushy, smells like despair, but you eat it anyway, because it might help. Maybe, probably not. but maybe. Then comes the vinegar. Someone says vinegar helps. No one knows why. But now every evening, the crew lines up for a spoonful of it, grimacing as they swallow. It's sour, sharp, and burns your throat. You hold it in your mouth for a moment, hoping it reaches your gums. It doesn't. But it gives you something to hope for. Other remedies are even stranger. A man once told you that chewing on rope soaked in rum could keep your teeth strong. Another swore by a pouch of dried seaweed, tied around his neck like a talisman, and someone else tried to rub lemon peels on his lips. Where he got the lemon, you don't know, you didn't ask. But the truth is nothing really works. Scurvy is slow and it's cruel. It makes everything harder. Climbing the rigging feels like dragging an anchor. Hoisting the sails leaves you gasping for breath. Even sitting down hurts. Your joints ache, your skin bruises, your gums bleed, and your body just gives up. And when the sun goes down, and the ship rocks gently under the stars, the silence below deck is filled with the sound of coughing, labored breathing, men moaning in their hammocks, some praying, some just waiting for citrus. Because that's the great irony. Somewhere far away on dry land, there are oranges growing, lemons, grapefruits, all plump, juicy and full of the thing you need, but you're out here floating on an ocean of nothing, chewing on biscuits and hoping the next port has something green. Sometimes, in your half-sleep you dream of fruit. Not treasure, not rum, not gold, just a single slice of lemon. You imagine biting into it, feeling that sharp, sweet burst of life on your tongue. It's so vivid that when you wake up your mouth waters, but all you find beside you is a roach on your pillow. And so the day begins again. This isn't the France you think of now. No Eiffel Tower, no Paris skyline, no cafes. This is 12th century Occitania, a land of troubadours, castles, farmers, and a quiet growing cult that calls itself the true Church of God. They are known as the Cathars. To some they were heretics, to others, saints. To the church, they were a sickness. Let me take you inside their world. It starts, not with a bang, but a whisper, a belief spreading slowly across hillsides and marketplaces, from lips of wandering preachers, from old scrolls written in the local tongue, from conversations too soft for a priest to hear. The Cathars believed in dualism, not unlike the Bogomils before them, who passed their ideas like a torch westward across Europe. But the Cathars took it further. They believed that the world, this world, the one you're lying in right now, was evil, not metaphorically, not in a human weakness kind of way. Evil. They believed in two gods. One was the good God, the God of spirit, of truth, of light, the creator of souls and the divine realm. The other was the God of matter, of flesh, of the physical world. This second God, they believed, was Satan, the one who created your body, your bones, your blood, who built this entire world as a kind of prison, a distraction, a cruel imitation of the real one. To escape, the Cathars believed you had to reject the world completely. That meant no meat, no wine, no sex, no marriage, no attachment, no wealth, no ownership, not even in the end your own name. They called their spiritual leaders the perfecti, the perfect ones, and these men and women lived exactly as they preached. You picture one now, dressed in plain robes, thin from fasting, eyes gentle but unwavering, walking from village to village in sandals, never asking for food, but always offered some, speaking to crowds, not in Latin, but in the local tongue, Occitan, so that everyone could understand. The perfecti carried no cross, no icon, no holy water, only the consolamentum, a spiritual rite that replaced all sacraments. It was a kind of blessing, a transmission of divine grace, one that could be received only once, and only when the recipient was truly ready to renounce the world forever. You didn't take it lightly. Some waited until their deathbed, because once you received it, you were no longer part of this world. To the peasants, the Cathars were comforting, peaceful. They healed the sick, gave freely, preached gently. They didn't ask for tithes or taxes. They offered a version of Christianity without corruption, without violence, without gold. To the church, this was a nightmare, because the Cathars didn't just criticize corruption. They denied the legitimacy of the church itself. They said the Pope was a fraud, that the priests were blind, that the entire system was built on lies, and more than anything, they refused to be silenced. By the early 13th century, Catharism had grown so strong in southern France, that whole towns were said to be heretical. Local nobles protected them. Bishops ignored them. Some towns even refused to recognize papal authority. The Vatican had seen enough. In 1209, Pope Innocent III launched something the world had never seen before, a crusade, not against the Holy Land, not against Saracens, against Christians, against their own people. It would be called the Albigensian Crusade, named after the town of Albi, a Cathars stronghold. The Pope promised forgiveness of sins to any knight who took up arms, and tens of thousands did. The violence was shocking. Towns were sieged and burned to the ground, entire populations slaughtered. In one infamous incident, the town of Béziers was attacked. When asked how to distinguish Cathars from Catholics, the papal legate reportedly said, "Kill them all. God will know his own." Over 20,000 people were massacred. You can almost hear the screams now, drifting on the wind, rising from the flames, but you don't need to imagine it in detail. That's not what this moment is for. Just understand. The Cathars were hunted like animals, and yet they didn't fight back. Most refused to take up arms. Even as cities fell and friends were executed, many of the perfecti kept preaching, kept consoling, kept walking. They went underground, literally. They hid in caves, in cellars, in the mountains. They changed names, used signals, continued the faith in secret, but one by one their sanctuaries fell. The final stand came at Montségur, a fortress perched high on a rocky peak. There in 1244, after months of siege, the last major group of Cathars perfecti surrendered. They were offered a choice: renounce their faith or be burned. They chose the fire, 200 of them. They sang hymns as the flames rose. The Crusaders called it a victory. The church claimed the heresy had been stamped out. But the story doesn't end there, because even as the ashes cooled, the legend of the Cathars grew. Tales of their gentleness, their courage, their mysterious beliefs, they spread like seeds on the wind. Some said the Cathars had hidden a sacred treasure at Montségur. Others claimed they knew a secret truth the church had tried to destroy. In the centuries that followed, their name would be invoked in whispers, in books, in secret societies, in conspiracy theories. But right now all you need to know is this: they believed in a different world, and they were willing to die for it. And now we move again. You've heard from the rebels, the prophets, the purists, but in our next stop you'll meet a group that was different. Not rebels, not heretics, knights, sacred warriors, bound by vows. But some say those vows hid a darker truth. You've probably heard their name, the Templars. But what you've heard might not be the full story. We're still in Europe, still in the time of crusades. But now the setting shifts again. From the rural hills of southern France, to the grand halls of stone fortresses, from secret cave gatherings to candlelit commanderies, we're stepping into the world of the Knights Templar. And while you've probably heard that name before, you might not know how strange, how mysterious and how terrifying their story eventually became. It begins in the year 1119. The First Crusade is over. Jerusalem, once held by Muslim armies, is now under Christian control, at least, for a little while. Pilgrims are coming in droves, eager to walk where they believe Christ once walked. But the roads to Jerusalem are dangerous. Bandits, desert raiders, lone riders hiding among the rocks. And so a small group of knights decides to take up a different kind of crusade. Not to conquer, but to protect. 9 men, that's all, just 9. Led by a knight named Hugues de Payens, they swear sacred vows, of poverty, of chastity, of obedience. They renounce personal wealth. They will own nothing. They will serve God by protecting pilgrims. They call themselves the poor fellow soldiers of Christ and of the Temple of Solomon. But you know them by the shorter name, the Knights Templar. At first they're barely noticed, but slowly things begin to change. The King of Jerusalem gives them quarters on the Temple Mount, the same hill where the Jewish temple once stood, and later the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The symbolism is overwhelming. The Templars begin digging beneath their new home. We don't know what they were looking for, or what they found, but after that everything changes. Within a few decades the Templars are no longer just knights. They are bankers, landowners, castle keepers. They form the first international banking system, allowing nobles to deposit wealth in Europe and withdraw it safely in the Holy Land. They wear distinctive white mantles with red crosses. They never cut their beards. They train relentlessly. They fight ferociously. They never ransom themselves. They never retreat. To join them you must renounce the world completely. You take no wife. You inherit no land. You are buried with nothing. And within 100 years the Templars become something no medieval institution had ever seen. They are warrior monks with power. They own estates in France, England, Spain, Portugal. They answer only to the Pope. They become wealthy, efficient, respected, and feared because no one really knows how they operate. Their rituals are secret. Their rules rigid. They meet behind closed doors. They answer only to their Grand Master and to God. And when the Crusades begin to crumble, when Jerusalem falls, when the knights are pushed back to the coasts, the Templars remain, holding fortresses, guarding relics, whispered to be protecting something greater than just territory. Some believe they found something beneath the Temple Mount, a treasure, a scroll, a secret. No one agrees what it was, but the rumors begin, and the church starts to worry. By the early 1300s the Templars are no longer on the front lines of war. They're in Europe, managing estates, issuing loans, influencing politics. And then they make a mistake. They cross a king. Philip IV of France is heavily in debt to the Templars. He's impatient, paranoid, broke. He needs a way out. And so on Friday the 13th, in the year 1307, he orders the mass arrest of every Templar in France. They are accused of unthinkable things: spitting on crosses, denying Christ, kissing each other in secret rituals, worshipping a mysterious idol named Baphomet, engaging in indecent rites. The accusations are shocking. The public is stunned, and the church, under pressure from Philip, begins to investigate. Templars are tortured, burned, forced to confess. Some deny everything, even under pain. Others break. We don't know what's true and what's not. The line between reality and fear becomes impossible to see. But what we do know is this: Jacques de Molay, the last Grand Master of the Templars, is taken to a scaffold in 1340. Before the flames are lit, he calls out to the Pope and the King. He says they will both die within the year, and they do. The Templars are officially dissolved. Their property is seized. Their name is cursed. But the myth only grows. Some say survivors fled to Scotland, to Portugal, that they became secret orders, guarding hidden relics. Others say the Freemasons descended from them. Some even say they found the Holy Grail. You don't need to believe any of it. You just need to know that a group of men once vowed to live without comfort, to die without fear, and to serve a higher power, no matter the cost. And whether they were saints or something darker, they left their mark. You're still lying there quietly, and that's all you need to do. Let me carry the story forward, because after the nights fall, the mystics rise. Our next story isn't about blood, it's about visionaries. Men who looked beyond the sky and believed the world was about to end. They didn't wear armor. They wore robes. They wandered through cities in long winding processions, and with every step they struck fear into the hearts of those who watched. They were called the Flagellants, and their pain was their prayer. And their pain was their prayer. And their pain was their prayer. Men once vowed to live without comfort, to die without fear, and to serve a higher power, no matter the cost. And whether they were saints or something darker, they left their mark. You're still lying there quietly, and that's all you need to do. Let me carry the story forward, because after the nights fall, the mystics rise. Our next story isn't about blood, it's the 14th century, and something is happening. The Black Death is sweeping across the continent. Imagine the world around you falling apart in slow motion, village after village silenced, bells tolling for the dead every hour, markets abandoned, entire families disappearing within days. Some towns have no one left to bury the corpses. People are terrified, and in that terror, a new kind of cult begins to form. You don't see them at first, you hear them, a low chant. A line of men walking barefoot down the muddy road, backs already bleeding, their hands gripping whips, ropes with knotted ends, sometimes tipped in iron or bone. They are flagellants. They walk in silence except for the rhythm of their movement and the soft groans of pain. Their robes are plain, often white or beige, stained with blood. Their heads are covered. Some wear crowns of thorns. They carry wooden crosses and crucifixes, but they're not priests. They're ordinary people. Merchants, tailors, farmers. Some are former soldiers, but they believe they're on a mission. They believe the plague is God's punishment, not just for kings or popes, but for everyone. And the only way to save the world is through suffering. They gather in groups of 30, 40, even 100, walking barefoot across the countryside from one city to the next. In each town they stop in the main square. A space is cleared, and then without speaking, they form a circle. One by one they kneel, remove their robes, and whip themselves across the back, hard, again and again. Each blow is a prayer. Some of them chant hymns as they bleed, others fall into trances. The sound of the whips echoes off the stone walls. The crowd watches in silence. Some cry, some faint, and sometimes, others join in. They travel from Germany to France, from Poland to the Low Countries, their numbers growing. They sleep outdoors. They eat whatever is given. They don't stay long. They say their message, perform their penance, and move on. They are not part of the church. In fact, the church begins to fear them because their message is simple and dangerous. They say you don't need priests, you don't need sacraments, you don't need Rome, you only need pain, purity through suffering. It spreads fast, faster than the church can respond. By 1349, in the heart of the plague years, there are thousands of flagellants across Europe. Some groups take it further. They begin blaming others for the plague. Jews, heretics, foreigners. Violence follows. Mobs form. Towns burn. The church steps in. Bishops denounce them. Pope Clement VI issues a decree condemning the movement. Troops are sent to break up the processions. Leaders are arrested. Some are executed. And slowly, the movement dies out. Not all at once, but it fades. The roads grow quiet again. The whips are laid down, and the flagellants, those bleeding pilgrims, disappear. But their memory lingers. In art, in stories, in warnings, because theirs was a kind of devotion that made people uneasy. It wasn't performed in cathedrals, it wasn't blessed by priests. It was raw, bleeding, terrifying, and for a time it felt holy. You're still with me, that's good. Let that image drift away, the circle of kneeling pilgrims under a pale European sky, and know that you're safe now, wrapped in your own quiet world. But we're not done yet, because in another part of Europe, far from the cities of wealth and plague, another group was forming. They weren't warriors, they weren't mystics, they were children, and they believed with all their hearts that they had been chosen to reclaim the Holy Land. No swords, no shields, just faith and innocence, and the long road ahead. We've seen warriors, mystics, monks, and martyrs, but this next story, this one is different, because it doesn't begin with soldiers, it begins with children. This is the story of the Children's Crusade, one of the strangest, saddest and most haunting movements of the medieval world. And though parts of it have slipped into legend, what remains is enough to stay with you, long after the last voice falls silent. Let's go back to the year 1212. Europe is still reeling from the earlier Crusades. Jerusalem has changed hands again and again. Pilgrims are growing anxious. The clergy preaches that God's favor has been lost, that something pure is needed to reclaim the Holy Land. And then, something begins to happen. In a small village in France, a boy, maybe 12 years old, maybe 14, begins to speak. His name is Stephen of Cloyes. He says he's seen a vision, a light brighter than the sun, a message from Jesus himself. According to him, Christ has told him that only the innocent, children, can take back Jerusalem. Not knights, not kings, just children. No blood, no weapons, only faith. At first people laugh, but Stephen is persistent. He preaches in marketplaces, outside churches, at crossroads, and slowly, others begin to listen, to believe. He says the sea will part for them, like it did for Moses, that angels will guide them, that Muslims will convert peacefully when they see the purity of the children's hearts. And then, they start to follow him, first dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. Not just children. Some are teenagers, some are wandering beggars, some are adults with the minds of children, some are just poor, hungry, and desperate for purpose. But they begin to walk, from village to village, singing hymns, carrying crosses, chanting as they go. People line the roads to watch, and the movement grows. At the same time, in Germany, a similar story is unfolding. A boy named Nicholas of Cologne gathers a second wave of young crusaders. His message is the same: only the pure of heart can succeed where armies have failed. And so two great movements of children begin to march across Europe. No formal leaders, no supplies, no protection, only belief. They sleep in barns, in fields, under trees. They beg for food. They keep moving. Some towns welcome them with awe, others turn them away. Many children die on the road, from exhaustion, hunger, illness, but the groups push forward, convinced that a miracle awaits. Eventually Stephen's group reaches Marseille, on the southern coast of France. They expect the sea to part for them. It doesn't. They wait for days. Some begin to cry, others pray harder, but no dry path appears. Then, two local merchants offer them ships. Free passage, they say, a gift, a miracle in itself. 7 ships, the children board. They sing as they leave the harbor, but they never arrive in the Holy Land. Some are shipwrecked off the coast of Sardinia, hundreds drown, the rest are sold into slavery in North Africa. The merchants were slave traders, the voyage was a trap. Those children, whose names are mostly forgotten, never return. In Germany, Nicholas's group fares no better. They try to cross the Alps, many freeze, others are attacked. When they finally reach Italy, the Pope tells them to go home. Some do, many never make it. In the end, the children's crusade leaves behind no victories, no relics, no holy conquest, only questions. Historians still debate what really happened. Some say it was never thousands, only hundreds. Others argue it was exaggerated over time. But the bones of the story, the heart of it, remains. That in a world ruled by blood and sword, there were once those who believed that purity alone could change it. They were wrong, but they believed. And that belief, that haunting tragic hope, still echoes quietly, like the sound of small footsteps on an ancient road. You're still safe, still here. Let that story fade now, like the sea closing over a ship that never made it home. Because next, we'll leave Europe behind. We'll travel east, to China, where a secret sect is beginning to form, one that believes in the eternal mother, in a coming Messiah, and in the power of the lotus, the flower that blooms in mud. They are quiet, patient, waiting for the world to end. They are the White Lotus Society. You've arrived in medieval China. It's the time of the Song dynasty, sometime between the 12th and 13th centuries. The empire is vast. Cities rise along the rivers like pearls on a silk thread. There are scholars, libraries, poets, marketplaces, with lacquered wares and jasmine tea. There are Confucian courts, Taoist mystics, Buddhist monasteries, and hidden among them all, a secret sect. They don't have uniforms, no temples you can visit, no loud declarations. They gather in quiet rooms, lit by paper lanterns, in homes, in caves, in valleys where the wind carries the scent of rice and rain. They call themselves the White Lotus Society, and their belief that the world is broken, that the end is coming, and that a great enlightened being, the Maitreya Buddha, is about to return. They do not fear the end, they await it, but not passively, because the White Lotus is more than a prophecy. It's a network, a movement, a kind of underground engine humming quietly through villages, towns and provinces. The teachings are gentle on the surface. They believe in reincarnation, in karma, in the importance of meditation and good deeds. But they also believe something far more dangerous, that the current order, the emperors, the officials, the state-sponsored religions, is corrupt, not just flawed but unworthy of survival. To outsiders, the White Lotus looks like a peaceful Buddhist sect, but that's only half the truth. Inside their meetings, they speak of the Eternal Mother, a divine feminine force that created all beings, and will call her children back to her when the end comes. They teach that the world has gone through multiple cosmic cycles, and that we are living in the last one. The Pure Land, the heavenly realm, is waiting, but it can only be reached when this world collapses. And so slowly, their doctrine evolves. From meditation to militancy, they begin recruiting, especially among peasants, the poor, the landless. They promise salvation, not through temple rituals, but through devotion, secrecy, and resistance. Initiates are sometimes given charms, passwords, or coded books. Meetings are held in darkness. Members recite chants in unison, bow to invisible icons, and prepare, not for an open war, but for a time when the old world will fall, and the new one will rise. You can picture it now, a dark room lit only by a single oil lamp, shadows flickering across the wall. A man reads softly from a scroll written in red ink. Women and men kneel quietly, heads bowed. No one speaks unless spoken to. Their belief is total, and when the Mongol invasions weaken the ruling dynasties, the White Lotus stirs. They see the chaos, not as a crisis, but as a sign. A few cells rise in rebellion, small at first, scattered, but the idea spreads. We're back in Europe now. The air feels heavier here, damp with fog, thick with coal smoke, and buzzing quietly with superstition and control. The church is at its peak. The cathedrals rise like mountains of stone, and the Latin tongue flows from every altar. But not everyone is convinced. Some people have started to question, quietly, carefully, and some, they've decided to answer back. It's the late 14th century in England, and a movement is beginning to stir. A movement of preachers, peasants, and hidden books. They will be called Lollards, though it won't be a name they give themselves. It's a name the church will use. One that starts as an insult, but like many things in history, the truth is deeper than the label. Let me show you. We begin with a man named John Wycliffe. He's not a soldier, he's not a rebel, he's a scholar, from Oxford, no less. He wears the robes of a priest, reads Latin fluently, understands the structure of church law better than most bishops. But deep inside him, there's something burning. A question: why? If God's message is for everyone, is his book locked behind Latin? Why are the scriptures controlled by the clergy, guarded like gold, and never placed in the hands of the common people? Wycliffe starts preaching, softly, at first, then louder. He says that the Pope has no divine authority, that priests are not necessary for salvation, that the true church is not a building, not a bureaucracy, but the gathering of believers, wherever they are. And then, he does something unthinkable. He begins translating the Bible into English. The church is horrified. This isn't just a breach of etiquette. It's heresy, a direct threat to the very structure of religious control. But Wycliffe is protected, at least for a while, by powerful allies. Nobles who admire his ideas, students who carry his words into the streets. And after his death, his followers continue the work. These followers are the Lollards. No one knows for sure where the word comes from. Some say it means mumblers, a mockery of their quiet preaching. Others think it comes from a Dutch term for heretics. Either way, the name sticks. But their mission, it's anything but small. They begin copying Wycliffe's English Bible by hand, one verse, one chapter at a time, smuggling them from house to house, reading by candlelight, whispering the words of Scripture into the ears of the poor. They start forming study groups, not in monasteries but in barns, back rooms, forest clearings, and slowly an underground network grows. They don't dress differently, they don't march in protest, they blend in, but their minds, their hearts, they're set on fire. They reject the doctrine of transubstantiation, the idea that bread becomes flesh during communion. They deny the use of indulgences. They criticize the wealth of the church. They believe that any man, any woman, can be a priest, that confession, prayer, and salvation don't need permission. To many in power, this is terrifying, because it means the hierarchy isn't sacred, the system isn't divinely protected, and the people might start thinking for themselves. In 1401, the English Parliament passes the first statute for burning heretics. The Lollards are now hunted. Some are arrested, others are tortured, a few are publicly executed. One of them is William Sawtry, burned alive for refusing to renounce the English Bible. Another is John Oldcastle, a nobleman who sides with the Lollards and is eventually hanged and burned for treason and heresy. The crackdown is severe, but the Lollards never fully vanish. They adapt, they hide their texts behind false walls, they disguise themselves as pilgrims, they bury their scrolls beneath fields. In some towns, you can still find records of Lollard trials, lists of names, accusations whispered by neighbors, and confessions made under duress. But through it all, the words survive. Wycliffe's Bible continues to circulate, and the seeds of the Lollard movement, scattered, suppressed, buried, begin to take root in other hearts. Hearts that one day will beat loudly during the Protestant Reformation. But for now, they beat quietly, like a drum beneath the floorboards. You've just walked through another secret hallway in medieval history, one lined with books, not blades. But we're not finished, because just beyond these quiet English fields, Another fire is building, one with banners, and songs, and battle cries. A new movement is rising in Bohemia, led by a man who believes in truth above obedience, and who will pay for that belief with his life. His followers will become warriors of faith, fighting crusades of their own. Their name, the Hussites, and they're waiting for us next. Now we cross over to Bohemia, modern-day Czechia. The cities here are quiet and old. Red rooftops, bell towers, stone streets that glisten when it rains. And underneath all that beauty is a growing unrest. It's the early 1400s. Europe is tense. The church is divided. Corruption is rampant. And in the city of Prague, a preacher has begun to speak. His name is Jan Hus. And though he may look like a simple priest, with a long robe, soft hands and a scholar's patience, what he's about to do will shake the foundations of the church. He believes what many before him have whispered, that the church has lost its way, that priests are too rich, that popes have forgotten humility, that the word of God should be accessible to all. He reads Wycliffe, he studies scripture, and then he begins to preach. But he doesn't hide. He doesn't meet in barns or secret caves. He preaches in Bethlehem Chapel, right in the heart of Prague, in Czech not Latin, so everyone can understand. He says that communion should be shared equally, with bread and wine, not just bread for the common people and wine reserved for clergy. This idea becomes a symbol, a message, and soon an emblem, the chalice. The chalice becomes a banner for those who follow him, those who want truth, reform and equality in the church. At first the church tries to silence him gently, warnings, letters, meetings, but Huss will not stop, so they invite him to the Council of Constance in 1415. They promise him safe passage, but the moment he arrives, they arrest him. They put him on trial for heresy. He defends himself calmly, eloquently, but his fate is already sealed, and so one cold day, they lead him to a pyre. They tie him to the stake. He refuses to recant, and they burn him alive. The flames rise. His ashes are scattered in the Rhine. But Huss's voice doesn't die. It multiplies. Bohemia explodes. His followers, now called Hussites, rise up, not just in grief but in open rebellion. They are not quiet heretics. They are an army. At their peak they control vast territories. They build Tabor, their own fortified city, a kind of holy commune, where property is shared, and scripture is taught freely. Their fighters, often peasants, carpenters, farmers, become legendary for their tactics. They turn wagons into armored fortresses. They circle them in rings on the battlefield. Inside are slings, crossbows, cannons. They're led by a man named Jan Žižka, a veteran, blind in one eye, then blind in both, and still he leads, strategizes, wins. Under his command, the Hussites defeat crusades, not once, but 4 times. The church sends wave after wave of soldiers against them, and the Hussites break them, because they aren't just fighting for land, they're fighting for something deeper, for a belief that the church should serve the people, not rule them, that faith belongs to every soul, not just those in robes and crowns. Eventually, the Hussites splinter. Some are more radical, others more willing to compromise. After Žižka's death, internal disagreements begin to fracture the movement. By 1434, the Battle of Lipany marks the end of the militant phase. The radicals are defeated. Some Hussites reintegrate into society. Some ideas are absorbed quietly into Czech culture. But the damage is done. The church knows now that belief, real belief, can't be silenced by force. And the memory of Huss doesn't fade. A century later, Martin Luther will name him a hero. The Reformation is coming. But before that, there's one more place I want to take you. Not a battlefield, not a chapel, a street, a quiet street, lined with torches, filled with masked faces, and at the center, not an army, not a preacher, but a child, alone, accused of witchcraft. You're standing now in a village that could be anywhere in Europe, England, Germany, Poland, France. It doesn't matter. The buildings are wooden, the roofs are thatched, smoke curls from chimneys into a grey sky. But something is wrong here. People are afraid, not of invaders, or plague, or famine, but of each other. It's the 15th century, and a new kind of cult is forming, one that doesn't gather in secret, or worship in caves. This one is born of accusation, whispers, fingers pointed in the dark. You hear it first in the marketplace. Someone says a woman's cow went dry because her neighbor gave her a strange look. Someone else says their baby fell ill after eating bread that had been touched by a certain hand. Soon someone remembers seeing that same woman talking to herself by the stream, or picking herbs at dusk, or walking barefoot through the churchyard. The word begins to spread. Witch. There's no leader of this cult, no sacred text, no meetings, and yet, it grows, because all it takes is fear, and a system ready to believe it. You see her now, the woman in question. Maybe she's older, or younger than you expected. Maybe she's kind, maybe she's not, but it doesn't matter. Someone says she made a pact with the devil, that she flies at night, that she keeps a familiar, a toad, a cat, a shadowy shape that follows her home, that she spoils crops with a glance, that she boils children's fat into salve, that she dances naked with others in the forest. None of it needs to be proven, because the panic itself is the proof. In a strange, horrible way, the community now believes they are under attack, by the invisible, the cursed, the impure, and so they must purge. Witch hunting becomes a kind of religion, a warped cult of its own. Torture is used, testimonies are extracted, through pain or terror, or sheer confusion. Some confess just to end the ordeal, some name others to escape the flames. Children accuse their mothers, neighbors betray old friends. A kind of fever grips the land, and it spreads, from town to town, village to village. Inquisitors begin traveling with manuals, books that describe how to detect a witch, how to question her, how to tell if her tears are real. The Malleus Maleficarum, or the Hammer of Witches, becomes one of the most widely read books in Europe. It explains how witches seduce, how they conjure storms, how they attend sabbats in the woods to kiss the devil, and feast on desecrated bread. And people believe it, because when fear becomes doctrine, reality doesn't stand a chance. You watch the trial now. The woman is brought forward, bound, head bowed. The crowd stares but no one speaks. She's asked questions that have no right answers. If she denies them, it's proof she's lying. If she confesses, it's proof she's damned. They search. The ocean is dark tonight, darker than usual. The moon is veiled by clouds, and the water seems endless in its blackness, like ink poured over glass. The only light comes from the lanterns swinging softly above, casting long, slow shadows across the deck. You can't sleep. Not because you're not tired, but because something feels wrong. You're not alone in that feeling. The men are restless. They move differently, slower, more careful. Whispers pass between them like wind through rigging. No laughter, no songs. Even the dice players have tucked their games away. And somewhere on the foredeck, an old sailor mutters under his breath, fingers tracing the same knot in his belt again and again like a prayer. This is a ship full of men who believe in things. Not gods, necessarily, not saints or sermons, but signs, omens, portents, little rules passed down through centuries of salt water and fear. Whistling on deck, forbidden, it's said to summon the wind, angry wind. Some say it tempts the devil to blow you overboard. Others believe it draws spirits from the sea, those who drowned and are looking for someone to take their place, bringing bananas on board. Bad luck. No one knows why, but everyone agrees. If someone sneaks one into their pack, and the ship suffers a snapped mast or a sudden storm, that man may find himself thrown overboard without trial. Women on board? Never. Not because pirates hated women, but because it was believed that the sea itself was jealous of a woman's presence, that her beauty would offend the waves, that she would curse the voyage with endless storms. If a woman was found stowed away, even in innocence, the articles might call for marooning, or worse, even animals had meaning. A black cat was lucky, so long as it left the ship and came back. A bird that circled the mast was a sign of death. Sharks that followed the ship were messengers from the underworld, and dolphins, well, dolphins were good luck, but if one was caught in a net or wounded, the men would weep openly. Better to sink the ship than anger a dolphin. Then there are the ghosts. Yes, they believe in ghosts. Not the white sheet kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that creak the boards when no one is walking. The kind that whisper your name from beneath the hold when you're alone. The kind that knock 3 times behind your hammock, and then never speak again. You've heard tales half whispered over bowls of stew and grog. A man who spoke to his dead brother in the fog. Another who vanished on a cloudless night, leaving only his boots. One sailor trembling, swore he'd seen a hand rise from the water and grip the anchor chain. No one laughed. The ship is filled with talismans, bits of bone, teeth, coins with holes in them, little pouches of herbs tied with string. A few men wear carved trinkets around their necks, tiny figures meant to ward off sea curses. You don't ask what they are, you just nod, solemnly. You've taken to tapping the mast twice before bed. You don't know why, you just do, just in case. Because out here on the edge of the known world, surrounded by nothing but dark water and dark thoughts, belief is not a luxury, it's a lifeline. If you don't have something to believe in, the sea might take you. And tonight, as the wind shifts and the lantern flickers, you pull your blanket tighter and whisper something, anything, into the darkness, just in case.
You wake to shouting, not the usual shouting.
Not the angry barking of the quartermaster or the groan of a man who's rolled out of his hammock. This is excited, urgent, hopeful. You stumble onto the deck, rubbing your eyes, and there it is, land, a green smear on the horizon, real, solid, alive. After months at sea, after storms, sores, biscuits and boredom, it looks like a miracle. The crew is buzzing, men point and cheer, some laugh, a few cry. One man drops to his knees and kisses the floor of the deck. You do none of those things, you just stare. The island grows larger by the hour. Trees, hills, smoke from a fire. You smell it before you reach it. Dirt, rich, loamy earth, wet leaves, cooked meat, not salted or dried, but roasted, fresh. Your stomach growls so loudly someone mistakes it for thunder. You dock by midday. The anchor drops with a final heavy clunk, a sound like permission, and then you step off the ship and feel it, the world. The ground beneath your boots is still, no sway, no tilt, just stillness. It makes you dizzy. The others feel it too. Some stagger like drunks, others drop to all fours, hands buried in sand, eyes closed. One man just lies flat, face in the grass, whispering something that might be a thank you to the dirt. You walk, slowly. Every step is strange. The path underfoot doesn't creak. There's no rigging above your head, no wind howling past your ears. Just the rustle of leaves and the soft hum of insects. Your ears ring from the silence. In town, people stare. You know what they see. Ragged clothes, burned skin, wild beards. You look like something washed ashore from another time, and in a way you have. You try fruit, real fruit, a mango, maybe, or a plum. It explodes in your mouth, sweet and cold and sharp. You tear into it like an animal. Juice runs down your chin, and you don't care. You eat until your stomach hurts. You drink something that's not grog, and it doesn't burn. You sit in a chair that doesn't move. You lie on a bed that doesn't swing. You listen to the wind, and it doesn't scream. For a moment, you remember who you were, before the sea, before the ship, before the endless days of salt and suffering. You are not a pirate here, not a sailor, not a ghost. You are just a man with sore feet and a full belly, staring at the horizon, and wondering, will you go back? Of course you will. You always do, because no matter how much the land soothes you, the sea still calls. It always does. There is nothing quite like stepping onto land after months at sea. The world doesn't sway. The buildings don't groan in the wind. The ground feels steady, almost insultingly so, like it's trying to prove a point. But you forgive it. You're just happy to stand on something that doesn't slosh underneath your boots. The port town smells different than the ship. It's not cleaner, just different. Less of salt and sweat, more of wood smoke, rotting fruit, cheap perfume, and overcooked meat. There are chickens wandering the muddy streets. Half-dressed children dart between carts and barrels. There's a donkey somewhere, braying in a tone that sounds suspiciously like a cry for help. But the taverns, oh the taverns are glorious. You and your crewmates stumble into the first one you see. A crooked wooden building with peeling paint, a crooked door, and the wonderful, unmistakable sound of mugs clinking and laughter erupting over someone falling off a stool. Inside, it's chaos. Smoke hangs thick in the air. The floor is sticky. The ale is warm. The food is questionable. And you've never been happier. The captain grants each man a handful of coins from the last haul, measured carefully, handed with a grunt and a warning. You barely hear the warning. You're already eyeing the nearest tankard. Shore leave is not about rest. It's about forgetting. Forget the ship. Forget the bruises, the lice, the biscuits with legs. Forget the storms and the hangings, and the quiet, creaking dread of the open ocean. You drink, and then you drink more. Someone buys you stew. It's hot and spicy, and you're not sure what the meat is. You don't care. You eat it like a man just released from prison, which in a sense you are. Around you, pirates shout stories no one believes. One claims to have sailed through a hurricane while asleep. Another swears he once swallowed a ring to hide it from a Spanish soldier, and didn't see it again until 3 months later in Barbados. No one questions how or why. The night blurs. You find yourself dancing with someone, possibly a woman, possibly not. You buy a hat from a man selling them out of a crate. It's 3 sizes too small and smells like wet bread. You wear it proudly. Eventually the brothels beckon. They always do. Some pirates vanish for hours, others for days. Some never come back. The ones who do often wear mysterious scratches and faraway smiles. One fellow returns with a bandaged ear and a pet chicken. He refuses to explain either. You spend your coin faster than you thought possible. A drink here, a dice game there, a round of roasted meat, a bottle of something with a skull on the label. Suddenly, you're broke. Again. Somehow, you have a new scar, a black eye, and no shoes. And yet, you feel whole again, almost human. But shore leave doesn't last. Eventually the captain shouts. The crew assembles, hungover and limping. Men count heads, curse the missing, tie sacks of dried provisions to their backs. You stare at the land, the taverns, the brothel door slightly ajar, and you go back, onto the swaying deck, back to the damp hammock, back to the weevils. You always go back, because even in all its filth and violence, the ship is your home now. The sea, your cellmate, and every drunken night in a smoky port town is just a dream you rent, until the tide turns. The end doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes it doesn't come with a single cannon blast. No storm, no mutiny, no gaping hole in the hull or Royal Navy bearing down with muskets blazing. Sometimes, a ship just dies slowly, quietly. You begin to notice it in the little things. The wood creaks louder at night, more than usual, like it's protesting. A tired old man with joints that won't bend like they used to. The ropes fray faster, the sails tear easier. Even the wind feels less eager to push you forward. The ship begins to feel like it's sighing, all the time. You scrape barnacles off the hull and find the wood soft in places, spongy, waterlogged. Rot, they say, just a little, just patch it. But the patches keep coming. Then the rats start leaving, not all at once, just fewer of them each week. The cook notices first less movement in the galley. You joke about it. They've found a better ship, someone says. But deep down you know what it means. Rats don't stay on dying ships. The crew changes, too. Fewer jokes, more silence. The old-timers grow quieter. The young ones leave at the next port, and don't come back. No one talks about it, but everyone feels it. The ship is tired, like it remembers every storm, every wound, every man it's carried and buried. You keep sailing, because that's what you do. You patch and repatch. You reinforce the beams, you swap out the sails, but nothing lasts. Eventually, even the captain loses that gleam in his eye. He speaks slower, sleeps longer. The wheel feels heavier in his hands. One day you dock in a quiet harbor, one you've never heard of. The sun is setting, and the captain says, "That's it." No fanfare, no speech, just that. That's it. The ship is unloaded for the last time. The crew disbands like smoke in the wind. Some stay. Some vanish into the hills. One man takes a job mending nets. Another opens a tavern with his share of coin and the last of his teeth. You go back one last time, just to look. The ship sits low in the water, empty now, still. The ropes hang limp. The deck is dusty. The sails are gone. It looks smaller than you remember. You walk the length of it barefoot. You remember where you used to sleep, where you bled, where you laughed, where you watched the sea glitter silver under moonlight, and believed, truly believed, you were invincible. You touch the mast. It's warm from the sun, but you can feel it. She's done. Later, when you hear they've broken her up for scrap, you feel something twist inside you. Not grief, not exactly, just the ending of something that mattered. The death of a floating world, not with glory, but with silence. And one last creaks, and one last creaks. So now, the sea is quiet again. The waves no longer crash, but glide, gently lapping against a forgotten hull somewhere in your memory. The sails are down. The crew has disembarked. The groaning of the timbers has faded into silence, and you're left there, floating in the warm hush of the ocean night. It's strange, isn't it? To think you've made it this far, through storms and scurvy, through lice and longing, through mutinies, myths, and endless meals of things that shouldn't have been edible. And now, after all that, you're still here, still breathing, still adrift. But now you know the truth. You wouldn't have survived. Not really, not the way you imagined, because being a pirate in the 1600s was not romantic. It was not a grand adventure. It wasn't a life of gold coins and red sashes and daring escapes under moonlight. It was hard. It was filthy. It was a long stretch of rope-burned hands and hollow bellies, sleepless nights and bleeding gums, endless chores and the looming fear of betrayal, not just from the law, but from your own crewmates. It was salt in your wounds and rats in your stew. It was losing a tooth just by chewing. It was watching a friend vanish overboard and never being allowed the time or the space to grieve. It was a life with no clean ending, no retirement plan, no gentle goodbye, just more sea. And then, less of you. But still, despite all that, part of you feels it, doesn't it? That strange pull, the lure of the horizon, the whisper of the waves, the soft rocking that makes you feel weightless, safe, free. There was beauty in it. Not the kind you read about in books, not the glory or the gold, but something quieter, something human. The way a man shared his last piece of bread without asking anything in return. The way laughter cracked through misery, like sunlight through storm clouds. The way the ship became something more than wood and nails. It became a world, your world. And yes, the sea was cruel, but it was also honest. It didn't lie to you. It didn't pretend. It took what it wanted and left the rest. And in between the suffering, there were still moments, brief, perfect moments, where the sun rose over calm water, and the wind was just right, and the sails were full, and the ship felt alive beneath your feet. And for a heartbeat, you believed you could sail forever. But you wouldn't survive, because you were never meant to, because some stories are best left floating in the past, like glass bottles with messages you're not quite meant to read. Stories of men who lived hard, died harder, and were buried by the sea without name or tombstone, just remembered in the creak of a dock, or the smell of salt, or the way the moonlight hits a mast in the distance, and makes you wonder what once passed by. You don't need to survive it, you just needed to imagine it, to drift a while, to let your mind sail away from the noise and the chaos of modern life, to close your eyes and smell the sea air, to feel the rough rope in your hands, the spray on your cheeks, the steady pull of the current beneath your bare feet. And now, as your breathing slows and your thoughts begin to quiet, you let go, let the ship sail without you, let the waves carry your weariness, let the wind rock you to sleep, because here, in this moment, there are no cannons, no hangings, no hunger, no lice, just peace, a warm ocean breeze, a lull in the tide, a ship disappearing slowly into the fog, leaving you safely behind on the soft shore of dreams. The creaking fades, the stars dim, the sea calms, and you finally drift off. Good night, pirate, and may you never need hardtack again.